Welcome back, everyone, to Common Sense Choices, and I'm Linda Toupin. Oh my goodness, it's been a hot minute since you and I have been together. I have moved since my last episode. I am now in my 110-year-old farmhouse on 5 acres here in Lexington, Kentucky, and I am so excited. I will tell you, it is a house full of windows. As you can see, there's just one small bank of windows back there. But the thing that you need to know about 110-year-old houses that have 110-year-old windows is that you almost freeze to death in the winter. But anyway, I'm learning a new way of life. I have inherited my daughter's rescue ponies, miniature ponies. And so now my life is about mud and manure. So there you go. It's all fun. It's all good. And I thank you for being patient with me as we begin a group of new series for my podcast, Common Sense Choices. If you're brand new, this is your first episode, welcome. Pull up a chair. If you're driving down the road, keep your eyes straight ahead, hands at 9 and 3, and enjoy the ride. Well, thank you for being a loyal listener, because it is because of people like you, our podcast has been so successful. And if you don't know about our podcast, it's kind of a little bit about everything. I've done things all the way from cooking episodes to how to run a business from your home, how to build confidence, how to travel free of charge, first class, to time management, money management. We did a whole series on Medicare, Medicaid, and hospice. You name it, we do it. And today our series is going to be, Are You Prepared for the Unexpected? So we're excited about this series. But before we get started, for those of you who are brand new, our podcast, Common Sense Choices, is based on the mantra that built a very successful business for me in the past 4 decades in 2 different continents. And we're going to say that mantra together, because if you're new, you may have never heard it, but most of you have. It goes something like this. Repeat after me. I am where I am by the choices I have made or I've allowed others to make for me. Take a deep cleansing breath and say it again. I am where I am by the choices I've made or I've allowed others to make for me. It's the ultimate in personal responsibility. God calls it free will. We just happen to call it choices. And so God gave you a choice this week about how to spend 168 hours. What an abundance of time you have. So many people have the wrong mindset about time. God gave you 168 hours. After you work a 40-hour week job, you have 128 hours left. If you sleep 8 hours a night, you still have 72 hours. You have 2 more work weeks after you work another week and you sleep 8 hours a day. It's unbelievable how much time you have. And so our life is really a series of choices. If we woke up this morning, we were not excited about the results we're getting from our life, look in the mirror and take personal responsibility. Don't blame your spouse. You married them. Don't blame children if your life is not fulfilled, because children aren't born to fulfill you. Ouch, I know that hurt a little bit, but you probably needed to hear that. What a burden to put on a child to fulfill their mother or father's life. That is not their purpose. And if your life is not going the direction you want, don't blame a boss. You choose to go there. And so there is something very freeing about being able to choose our own life. And so hopefully through my podcast, you get a sense of personal empowerment that you can choose a completely different life for yourself. So where are my podcasts located? You may be watching this on Facebook, YouTube, or listening to it on Apple or Spotify. Doesn't matter. We have a variety of episodes, as I've already said, for you to choose from. The very best way, everybody say it with me, the very best way to receive every episode is to go over to LindaToupin.com. You'll see it on the screen for those of you who are watching, LindaToupin.com, and just sign up. And I'll email you every episode. And while you're over there, check out our boutique, check out my coaching services. But in the boutique right now, depending on when you're watching this, what year you're watching this, these things change. One of our most favorite is our note cards, our postcards that you can use with our mantra on it. Or you may choose a kitchen magnet with the mantra on it. We also have a wonderful selection of accessory bags or money bags with the choices, and they come in a variety of colors. So again, depending on when you're watching it as to what colors are being offered. And then right now we have some beautiful other accessory bags or cosmetic bags, and these are all, again, they change from time to time. This is for the hippie in you. This is for those of you who just need something fun. And then, of course, you may be in your choices era. It doesn't matter. They're all over there for you to choose from. But by far, our most favorite and most popular is our canvas prints, 8 by 8 inches. And these are great for your classrooms or your offices or for gifts. It is the gift giving season, right? And you can also put these in your children's bedroom. But you can put these on little stands. But anyway, all those things support our podcast. Thank you for going over there and checking it all out. All right, without further ado, let's get this party started. I am excited about our first guest speaker in this series. Are you prepared for the unexpected? She is a personal friend of mine, someone who actually you will see her on a different episode about einkorn bread baking. We've already done this once before. Her name is Jeni Tjelle. She is from Coal City, Illinois. And hang on just a second. I'm going to bring her in. Hang on just a second. Let me see if I remember how to do this. All right. No, wait a minute. I just took myself off the screen. I need to fix this, remove the pen. Hang on just a second. Hang on. There we are. We're both together. Good morning, girl.
Good morning, Linda. Thanks for having me.
You look so beautiful. I think after this episode, everybody's going to buy like an iridescent top to wear when they Zoom. Well, first of all, Jeni, you have multiple in-home businesses. You and your husband both are successful entrepreneurs. But tell us a little bit about your family. You have some daughters, I believe.
Yes. So I'm married for decades to my husband. He always knows the exact year. I know it's more than 25. And we live in a small town, Midwest USA, Coal City, Illinois. And we have 3 adult daughters. My daughter Alexis and Elizabeth are twins. They are 25, and Alexis is married, and Elizabeth probably isn't far behind. So she has a lovely man in her life as well. So I have a son-in-law, Cameron, son-in-law to be Nicholas, and then my youngest, Olivia.
Well, first of all, you don't look 25. So there you go. You must have had children at like a Guinness Book of World Records age.
I wish.
By the sheer fact that you live in Illinois, we know that that is a tornado alley. So, I live somewhat in the Ohio Valley, and there gets to be troughs of storms, and they travel the same path. And where you live in Coal City, Illinois, is also one of those places that's the natural, unexpected disaster that can happen. And I use the word unexpected. We have warnings. We have tornado warnings. So we know that these things can happen, but sometimes we get lulled into a sense of, not really. Yeah, I hear the warning, but is it really until it happens? But it did happen to you. And we're going to throw up some pictures right now on our screen of your home that was destroyed. And what year was that, Jeni?
2015. It'll be 10 years this June.
Okay. And so I think we start with the story. What happened? Where were you when the warning hit? Where were you when the tornado ripped through your home? Let's start there.
Okay. Well, I had my at-home business is on a fiscal year. So oftentimes June is a wrap up and beginning, and I had a lot of things to do for a large event coming up. And so we used to go into the city downtown shopping for gifts and what have you. And so my daughters, the older two, the twins, Alexis and Elizabeth, had church camp to be dropped off the same day. So I thought, I'll just drop them off at church camp. I will go shopping. I'll get a sitter for Olivia. She could stay home. Husband would be home from work, life as usual. Well, she's probably my easiest child, my third, but she was throwing a fit. She wanted to go with me. And so I finally caved and I said, fine, just come with me. So we picked up a friend of mine that they call their grandmother. And so we picked up Grandma Lily on the way. We dropped off the older two, and then we proceeded to go. Everybody wanted to go to dinner. So Alexis and Elizabeth were on their way to Holland, Michigan. And we went to dinner after shopping, and I wasn't really in a hurry. And so on the way home, the sky did not look normal as it normally does in stormy, this time of year, spring that we're filming this. And Olivia started crying, and I don't want to go home. I don't want to go home. And so I dropped off Grandma Lily, and she's just throwing a fit. She does not want to go home. Now, my third child is not really a fit thrower. So I'm like, you know what? We'll just go back to Grandma Lily's and Papa's and we'll just visit. So I call them back. We're coming back. She doesn't want to go home. The clouds look really bad to the south. And Papa said, yes, I think you two should come back here. And I thought, okay. So we go back. I didn't think anything of it. I texted my husband, hey, everything okay at home? Yeah, it's fine. Okay, well, we're going to stay up here for a while. She wants to stay at Grandma and Papa's. Fine. So then the sirens started going off there. They live about 30 minutes north of us. So they wanted us to go in the basement and they had other grandkids over. So we all went in the basement and Tom called me in and he said, you need to text Derek and make sure that he's not asleep because this was hours later. And so I had texted my husband, are you sleeping? And he wasn't answering. And so I texted him again, are you sleeping? He said, in the basement. And I thought, in the basement? My husband's the dude on the deck watching the storm roll in. Like, he is not the basement guy. I have to beg him to come into the basement. And he said, I'm in the basement. I'm trying to get the dog down here, but I want to let you know she won't come. And I'm like, okay. So I was just kind of still not really processing. And then Tom called me into the room. They put the kids in the bathroom and he said, I think this thing is going to hit your house. And I said, I have chills right now. And I said, Tom, it never hits Coal City. The last time a tornado hit was like in the 1920s or 40s or something. Like, we live in the southern, we're not really like Coal City proper, I guess. It's a small village, so it's even weird to say that. But where I live is kind of the outskirts. So it's the southernmost western part of our town. And so normally when they say Coal City on the news, they're talking by the interstate. And so I don't live by the interstate. And we're also in a very low-lying area. So we never really worry where we live. Our whole subdivision doesn't really worry for the storms. And so I said, we don't have to worry until they say towns like Mazan or Carbon Hill. That's when we worry. And Linda, I kid you not, right then, the Weather Channel, like not just the news, the Weather Channel said, there is a double tornado that is building power and speed, and it's rain wrapped. You cannot see it, and it is traveling whatever direction, I don't even know now, but northwest, southeast, whichever way, down Carbon Hill Road, and will hit between the towns of Mazan and Carbon Hill within the next few minutes. You need to take cover. And I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, if they could have dropped a thumbtack on my house, that was it. And I started texting my husband, and the texts were sporadic. And I got a text that it's hitting our house. It tore off the roof. Water's coming in. Can't find the dog. Like, just all these. And I'm like, is this really happening? And we were safe. My girls were safe, but my husband was home. And I think the worst part for me was that none of us were together.
Oh,
My
absolutely.
whole
Right
family.
there. When your family is not together.
And that was the worst because my husband was here. He was in the basement. My youngest was with me. My two were out of state. And I knew this thing was going through my town. And it was huge. I mean, it was huge. It was almost a mile wide by 16 miles long. And I mean, it was just mass destruction in its path. And the scary part was that it was raining and nighttime, and you couldn't see it. You didn't know where it was. And then getting home that night and just the vision. Well, first I had to show my driver's license at like 6 different checkpoints to even get home. And I had never experienced that. I had been through a tornado as a child, but our neighborhood was fine. So I had never experienced such loss. And we live in a village, in a small community. And so it was just the whole community, including all of our schools, our fire department, banks, businesses. Like, I'd never experienced that before. So we had to keep showing our checkpoints. You couldn't get through. There were down lines. My road was flooded. So I drove, I don't know if this is okay to say, but I drove through like a cornfield and back roads of one of my in-laws' farms to get home because they weren't going to let me get through and I was going to get home. Like I wanted to see my house. I had to see my husband. And when I got home, we had a third story on our home at the time. We didn't rebuild that portion, but it had taken my whole third story and the whole roof off the house. And just driving down our street and seeing neighbors outside and just, I don't know. I don't have any
Wow.
other. It was
Wow.
just terrible.
And that's interesting because we have the pictures up on the screen again. So it took off the third story and you didn't rebuild the third story. It made no sense to you to rebuild a third story.
Yeah, it's just a small attic up there now.
Right.
Hmm.
Well, that is so many people's story around the nation, but we are so thankful for you that you're taking this horrific experience and educating people to be prepared. So let's start with some of the things that maybe we don't think about that we need to be thinking about. So for the listeners who are listening, if you're driving, just keep on listening. But for those of you who are maybe in a place with an ink pen or pencil, Jeni's going to give you a checklist of things that maybe you didn't think about. I know as I read through your notes, Jeni, before we started, there are things here I would never, ever think about. So let's just start at the beginning because you said emotionally,
Yeah.
when this happens, you don't have time to grieve.
No. And there's not only not grieving or mourning, you don't have time to think. People come in and they start asking you questions, and you've just been traumatized, really. And I didn't realize the true depths of my safety and security personality. That's when I realized that that was who I am, was when my home was ripped away. And I really learned something about myself because I do think that this is important to say. I'm good under pressure. I am good in catastrophe. I've lived through hard things like most women have, and I actually thrive in stressful situations. But this was like something that I had never experienced as an adult with children, my family separated in two different states, three different locations. It's an emotional trauma. That's the best way that I can explain it. So I feel like if you can be prepared and have a to-do list and have a plan, it will help you not be making decisions from emotion
And that's
because you
so
have,
important. That is so important because something I talk about all the time is the two different sides of our brain, emotion versus logic. And in a situation where it's going to be very, very emotional, is if you have a plan prepared, then it doesn't allow you to go off kilter, off the rails that could be harmful to you in the end. So, other people take charge. Okay. We are where we are by the decisions we made or allowed other people to make for us. And in a catastrophe like this, other people start making decisions for you. So those other people start, I assume, with the insurance company.
yeah, that and remediation. Like people come in and they want to help, and you are so grateful for them. But when they send people into your home, they're going through your things. And they're deciding, a lot of times like throwing away, keeping, whatever. And, that's if you watch the baking episode, that's one of the stories. That's how my great grandmother's sourdough starter got thrown away because it was in the refrigerator and they just assumed food, bad, garbage. And I was devastated by that. It took me years to bake bread again. So that's just one little funny story about, me and you. But, and then I finally kind of got my wits about me and was like, wait a minute. At the end of the day, these are my things in my house. I don't care that that's broken. My grandmother made that. I would like to keep that, please. Like, I feel like if you have some of these lists that we're going to talk about and do some of these things, you're going to be more prepared. Even if it's not you, you can hand it to a friend or a family member or an insurance adjuster and say, this is my important list.
Okay,
So,
so let's start with that. So
okay.
I assume, based on what you're saying, is everyone should have a list And I realize the list changes from year to year, from decade to decade of what is in your house. So how detailed does that list need to be? Like I'm looking at my dining room table and 6 chairs, but I also know those cabinets over there are full of serving dishes and placemats and napkins. I mean, how detailed does this list need to be?
Yeah, so that's not a straight answer. Let me just say this so that I don't forget. The first thing is contact your insurance company as soon as you can. That's number one. As soon as you can, contact your insurance company. Probably the second point that I would make is as soon as you are able, normally they say you can wait until daylight. As soon as you're able, you go through with your phone and take pictures and video of the damages because an adjuster's coming in and they're looking for big things and they might not look at all the things that you look at, maybe that have a different value system based on what insurance says it's worth. And so it's a good idea to have your own pictures. It also might take a little bit. So I'm very organized, but to answer your question, the detail of the list really depends on your insurance coverage. And that is my biggest thing in wanting to help people is to really sit with your agent and evaluate based on where you live, the amount of wind destruction, hail, damage that your area gets, and really make your insurance meet the requirements based on where you live because it is different in every area. You might live in an area that's more prevalent to fires. You would want to talk more about that. In our area, it's hail, wind damage, and tornadoes. So if you don't have, the word just left me, total replacement cost in your policy, then they will replace item for item. On our personal property, we had replacement costs. So, for example, I had a lot of baby furniture, cribs, playpens, baby toys. All of that has value. Some things you don't realize that all the little Fisher Price toys or whatever, they all have value. And so it's important to have an inventory list, and you don't have to be so detailed like, 7 American Girl dolls or whatever. You just have to have an idea in each bedroom what's in there. If you store things, if you have any collectibles or collections, you want to have an idea and have a picture. And the picture does not live in the camera roll of your phone. The picture is stored in the cloud in a Dropbox on a flash drive that's in a safe that's fireproof and waterproof. Like, you scan things and have that. So we had total replacement costs. So I didn't have to replace a crib with a crib. We got a total payout for personal property loss. And then we bought the furniture and the items that we needed because my girls were teenagers. They were no longer babies. I didn't need the baby furniture. So
Okay,
it kind of depends on
so
your
if you don't
insurance.
have total replacement value, which I assume, this is my fault, I assume everybody has total replacement value. You're saying that that's not the norm? That's not what most people have?
It depends on their budget. I think a lot of times when people, and this is kind of going a little deeper, but when you are going for a mortgage and applying for a mortgage, oftentimes your insurance policy will meet your budget. They insure the very least to meet the budget to get approved for a loan. And so you really have to investigate the policy. I think the total replacement is more common now than it used to be in years past because we learned a lot of new things from our insurance than when my husband and I first bought our home. Also, increase of home value. You have to make sure you could have a home for 20 years and you maybe had $100,000 policy on your home and now that home is worth 300,000 or whatever. You have to make sure that your insurance just meets what your replacement cost is to rebuild that home. One of the biggest things is code coverage. I learned that the standard is 10%. So that means that if your current home is going to be repaired and not rebuilt, and let's say your electric is not up to code, like ours isn't, they would only allow you 10% more to put toward the code. Well, the code is the code and it costs what it costs. So if that 10% isn't enough, guess who pays the extra?
Right,
You do
right,
as a homeowner.
right.
So you want to make sure that total replacement, there's a difference between replacing the home and then replacing at the current today cost. So
So
total replacement cost is like if you have a countertop, a granite countertop, you're going to get a new granite countertop. It doesn't matter what you paid for your granite countertop. You're going to get that replaced at today's cost.
all right. So what I'm taking away from this is how often do you recommend our listeners to actually meet with their insurance guy to go through their homeowners and really make sure it's up to date?
Yeah, I our insurance agent is a very good friend of ours. And so I was very thankful for that because he really walked us through the process. And before you and I were to meet today, I asked him that question. And unfortunately, there was really no definitive answer because it depends on, again, life circumstance. So, like his suggestion was normally in a time where prices really go up, so inflation, job change, marital status change. Let's face it, my husband's very handy. We were able to get more done because my husband took care of a lot of those things. If I were a single woman, I would have had to hire a lot of those things out. Therefore, I need more coverage to cover that. So I think it depends on life circumstance, but personally, and I am not an insurance person, I would say 3 to 5 years, just it's worth a phone call.
Well, I mean, absolutely. I think of two examples. One is I just moved, 6 months ago, and I'm adding a greenhouse. And so I called my agent and I said, listen, this is not just like a little greenhouse. This is like a really cool, like hippy dippy greenhouse. And I said, it has this amount of value. And he said, well, you have this much on your detached garage. And I'm thinking, that ain't enough for my detached garage. I can tell you that right now. I don't even need to get anybody out here to do an estimate. So we had to redo that whole section. And then we realized the little shed, the run-in shed for the ponies wasn't covered. And I was like, okay, we really need to look at all of this and make sure that I have enough coverage on all of this. Okay, so that's one example. A second example, which is much worse, is about 10 years ago, I was actually sued by a photographer for using a photograph on Google, which was a real thing for many years. And now I think, the law has finally caught up to the photographers who are spamming people. But anyway, I am thinking my liability on that I've been paying I'm like you, I have an insurance agent and I've had the same insurance company since I was 16. So I've had them for 60 years or 55 years. Okay. And so I call and he's like, oh yeah, this will cover it, getting a lawyer and doing all this stuff, only to find out like 24 hours later, he had to call me and say, Linda, I'm really sorry. This was actually dropped several years ago because there were so many lawsuits. And I was horrified to learn that I was thinking I was covered. Now, push come to shove, they ended up covering me, but I don't know that they had to. I think they just did because I was a 5-decade customer. Meaning, to your point, what you think you have may not be what you have in this decade or in this year based on inflation, based on life changes. Those were really good points. And so hopefully everybody, when this is over, the next call you make will be to your insurance agent. And it's worth a call. It's worth a call.
This is call. And Linda, I will say to your point, there are changes happening to your policy that you don't know are happening. I don't know about anybody else, but I am very detailed and methodical, and I'm organized in my home. And I have a little something I'll show about the inventory and things. But I'm going to say, I would guess 99% of Americans do not read that yearly packet that comes from your insurance agent once a year. And I'm going to bet that people read it less that get it electronically. And within that packet lies all the changes to insurance, all the new laws, all the new disclaimers. For example, because of all the recent storms, most insurance policy right now have a maxed cap on hail damage on what they will pay on a roof or a home that gets hail damage. And so you need a separate rider. Jewelry. If you have jewelry of any value, you need a separate rider. Electronics are only covered at the time of our insurance claim. We only had $5,000 in coverage. I have an at-home business. My husband had a company. I homeschooled three girls. And so we had much more than $5,000 in electronics. And it didn't matter because that's a homeowner's policy. And so, if you have an at-home business, that's a separate policy. You need a business liability insurance if you have a business in your home. You cannot rely just on your homeowners.
Well, again, a call to the insurance company
Mhm.
with a detailed list. Okay, so we're gonna I'm telling too many stories. Okay. So we need to quickly go through. Okay, safety. Well, where do you want to go next? Safety tips or because the inventory was get lots of pictures, make a list of
Yep.
everything that you have, put it somewhere safe in the cloud, or put it on a flash drive, put it in a safe deposit box. Why do you not store it on your phone?
Well, because updates, things can get lost.
Okay.
You
Okay.
know,
Okay. All right. So where do you want to go next? Safety tips or the things that you need? Okay, let's go there.
the safety tips, that's where we're going.
Yeah.
Okay. So, one of the things that we learned, if you have a basement, a lot of people look at it, well, we have a basement and we're fine. That is not always the case. We have two examples of two friends that were trapped in the basement because the house came down. So you really need an exit strategy to get out of the basement. Although the basement might protect your life from the tornado, how are you going to get out of the basement? And so one of our friends, they didn't have shoes because it happened during the night. So their entire family was down in the basement in pajamas with no shoes. Well, they had a crawl space, not a basement. Another friend, they were trapped in the basement because the house lifted up, fell, and split in half this way. And so the home was wedged into their basement and they were trapped down there. So if you're building, this is just my own 2 cents. If you are building a home, one of the things that we have is a solid concrete staircase surrounded by concrete leading to our basement from the garage. It's in the center of the home and it's three walls of concrete stairs going down to the garage with a big, or down to the basement from the garage with a big steel door. So at least, we could get out. Also, ladders, now egress windows are required in window wells, at least in our area. And so having a step ladder, because children cannot climb out of a window well. So having a step ladder close or a drop ladder similar to a fire ladder that you can hang and get the children out of the basement through a window. Um, and I know it sounds funny, but I'll go through this list really quickly. Have a safety box in your basement that's pretty well waterproof. Pocket knife, scissors, candles, lighter, matches, batteries, and you have to rotate the batteries. You have to make sure that they're new. Flashlights, there's battery-free flashlights that you can get. There's rechargeable batteries. Work gloves. That was a big thing everybody wished that they had was work gloves because oftentimes you have to, friends of ours that were trapped in the basement, you have to move things and there's studs and nails and insulation and it's just a mess. So work gloves, goggles, even hard hats or old bike helmets, don't get rid of those. Put them in a tub in your basement if you have little kids. It's so much peace of mind to throw a bike helmet on your kid, and have them in the basement to protect their little heads. And then we had like galoshes or rain boots for our girls, and I kept life jackets in the basement because I'm a little bit afraid of tornadoes. Um, and so we kept life jackets because oftentimes flooding goes along with tornadoes. And so if they're little, you can't carry all the children with you. We had games, activities. We didn't want them to be scared. So we had like canned fruits, just a couple of things just to keep them busy and activities and games that we kept. Old pillows in your safe spot so that kids can lay on them, fall asleep, hold them over their heads. One of the things that I make my husband do when he gets new work boots for his job, we keep the old ones in the basement just in case, because I came home in flip flops and a fancy outfit, which was not conducive to coming home in a tornado. Just a quick tip. So I keep his old work boots. And then, if you purchase thing in bulk, back to inventory, if you buy a cow, just know when you bought it. Have the receipt for that. Keep it, scan it, because loss of food is a huge thing. We were out of power for weeks, weeks. And so just keeping those little things in mind that we take for granted, that you have $1,000 in your refrigerator, at all times. I think that's the very quick
Oh,
safety.
no, I think that's wonderful. Now, since then, you said that you have purchased a whole house generator, and that's
Yes.
something that I'm actually looking at here at the farm because in my other house, I was
Yes,
the only person in my whole neighborhood that had a whole house generator, which is expensive.
it
But
is.
in an ice storm, because we get a lot of ice storms here, I'm sure you do, is like I had electricity.
Yeah. And, the more you have in your house that runs on electricity, the more important a generator is. We have an in-ground swimming pool. And so for the pool to sit for 6 weeks, it would have been done. Like, so you have to think about those things that pay for themselves. A couple of things that I learned since the tornado, I guess that are safety tips as well. One of the things that I do when I renew my driver's license, we all keep an expired driver's license now in our safe because we had friends that their purses went in the tornado. You don't think to grab your purse, and sometimes there's no time. So you need an ID to get money, and when everybody in the town loses everything, you don't have a lot of that documentation if it's not in a safe. The days of a vertical drawer filing cabinet, I believe, are over or should be, or at least you should have a backup. So I keep an expired driver's license in our safe, keep cash. We had families that they didn't have underwear or diapers, or so you need cash to be able to go and get something from the store. Because if you live in small town America like me and your bank gets hit, nobody's getting any money because that bank only exists in your town. So my husband and I keep some money in a big name bank so that we have access to a cash station. And then that way we can get to it. And then we put all of our kids' pictures and movies and our wedding videos, all that is on fire safe flash drives now that we keep in our safe so that we have those memories. And then the animal lovers. If you have pets, train them to go to your safe space. We could not get our dog to go downstairs in the tornado. My husband tried and they freak out. And so he tried to pick her up, and it was either he was going to get attacked by the dog who had never bitten or growled anybody, or he had to make the decision to go downstairs. And obviously, my husband went downstairs and could not get the dog to come with him. She was never the same. Ultimately, that led to us putting her down because she was miserable. When we moved back home, she chewed through walls trying to get out of the house, and she was traumatized. So when we got our new puppy downstairs and we say it and she goes, and I've trained her to go into the bathtub in the basement with us, and she has a little
Wow.
blanket
See,
that
I would have never thought those thoughts.
we didn't either. We didn't
I
either.
would have never thought that thought.
And
But I
our
can see it.
kittens,
Like if you've
yeah,
trained a dog to not go somewhere, they're not going to go there, especially if there's trauma. I mean, if
yes,
there's all this noise and confusion and
yes.
you can sense your fear.
And our kittens, as soon as the windows broke, they were gone. And they ended up coming back, but you just don't know. So train your animals to go down with you because I know, when your child especially loses their home, you don't want them losing a pet too.
No.
So, that's one regret that I have is not because she wasn't allowed down there. So to not train her to go downstairs if I could go back.
Well, this has just been a wealth of information. Um, I mean, I know that we could probably go through this list in a great deal more detail, but I think you've given so many people so many specific things that they can do. Because I would have never thought about saving my old driver's license in my safe. I have it like in my desk drawer, but that's going to get destroyed in a tornado. Um, that, I mean, just so many things here because I never thought about like, okay, you got to have a certain amount of cash. And actually, we saw that just in the flooding in North Carolina,
Yes.
like last year, where people couldn't get anywhere because they had no cash, they had no gas, they had no credit cards, the machines didn't work. We have
Yep.
to think like, okay, if there is no electricity, there is no credit cards, you may not even have your credit card on you anyway. Where do you have cash stored that would be safe in a tornado? That those are really cruel thing. Now you said something about a tornado drill with your kids.
Yes. So the worst thing to do, even though we were not home, because I homeschooled, I did do things like fire drills and tornado drills. And now we own a dance studio. And so we do have drills because I have 150 kids in the building. The sirens go off. We need to know what to do. So if you have young children, doing a tornado drill to teach them whatever your word is, or if you have a bell or a sound, and you do it randomly and teaching them what to do, because everybody panics, just like my dog. When it's traumatic and urgent and an emergency situation, the last thing you want to be doing is screaming at your children. Everybody just has to know this is where we live. This is a possibility. We prepare for hard things because at the end of the day, we want our family to be okay. So we're going to learn how to do tornado and fire drills. And that's what we did. And they would get their little boxes and we'd hunker down in the bathroom and we'd play games or whatever. And then tornado drill over so that the kids know when the time comes, they're still going to be upset. It still is going to be emotional, but they're going to have rehearsed it.
Well, I love what you said is we prepare for hard things.
Hmm.
I know that's something that I teach my grandchildren is we can do hard things because hard things are a part of life.
Yes.
And there's been a couple instances this past year where we were facing some hard things. And instead of protecting the kids, I mean, obviously you cushion it and do all the things that you're talking about with having games and making it like this is just what we do, nothing to get all upset about, but this is what we do. We get ready for hard things. We prepare for hard things. And you have been such a blessing to my audience today. And I so appreciate your transparency and just, if one person's life is made better or spared by these tips, then it is worth the time that it took to do this today. And Jeni, I just thank you from the bottom of my heart. And for every listener, I know they are sending their love to you as well. And we're so grateful that you all, were spared and that your home, even though heavily damaged, as we can see from the pictures, you all was able to rebuild it and you're prepared. I would have never thought about a solid concrete structure in the basement so that you have a way of escaping.
Hmm.
I mean, I would have never
So
thought.
grateful for that because unlike so many others, my husband opened the door and walked out.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you so very, very much, Jeni. And for all of you, thank you for watching Common Sense Choices today. Remember, if you're not getting each episode on email, head on over to lindatoupin.com, sign up, and check it all out over there. And again, thank you, Jeni, and thank you for everybody who's watching.